to the interview series that I promised that we're going to start last week. We did Riverbed, and today I have with me an amazing gentleman by the name of Aaron Dinnage. For those of you who are in federal government, Aaron has or needs no introduction whatsoever. He is a very hard guy to get hold of because he is super, super popular, Aaron, because his brain power is all over the place. He is what Microsoft calls the modern workplace specialist. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And Aaron happens to work with federal government a lot, and I met Aaron at a common shared customer and was blown away by the knowledge that he has. And today I wanted Aaron to talk about one topic in particular because it's something that's close to my heart and has been over the last 2 weeks because I've seen far too many organizations compromised, not just from phishing attacks, but all sorts of things that are happening in the security space. So Aaron's here to share with us a fair bit of knowledge, especially around a framework that's called the Essential 8. I thought it was a beautiful summary and construct that has been, I suppose, taken from the Australian cybersecurity, a bigger part of the, or smaller part of the larger construct. And the best part about it, which Aaron will go into, is it doesn't matter what size organization you are, you could take from it what you need to secure your organization. So you don't have to go all the way into the higher end of the maturity model, but you could go whatever suits you. And it is, security is a balance, isn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Maria. And thank you for the opportunity to have a chat today.
No worries, thank you. So over to you, Aaron.
Thank you. So yeah, as Maria said, I work as a modern workplace specialist here in Microsoft. I'm based here in Canberra, and so I work exclusively with Australian federal government and the ACT territory government as well, and as a product specialist around what is Microsoft 365. So that combination of Office 365 that we're all familiar with and the EMS suite of security tools that supplement that, all the way down to Windows on the desktop. So it's a pretty big product portfolio, and it's a very challenging customer base across the breadth of federal government, but it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about what the Essential 8 are? I know there's a lot to it, but if you could just distill it as simply as you possibly can.
Yeah, sure thing. So the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, which is a part of the Australian Signals Directorate, which is a defence organisation, they're tasked with providing cybersecurity guidance to the whole of the Australian economy. So whilst it's very well known within federal government circles, it actually has applicability far more broadly than that across everything from small organisations up through medium and enterprise and into government as well. And the Essential 8 is really the Cybersecurity Centre's way of picking the very top things that you should focus on. If nothing else, these are the things that are core to maintaining the security of your organisation. They then break it out into a maturity model, which is really handy. So it helps you to step through what is a entry-level maturity up through the 3 levels to a really mature implementation. So they're not expecting everybody to sort of dive headfirst into the deep end and put in some really restrictive security practices. They understand that every organisation needs to find the balance on those 8 essential items to find what's going to work for them, but hopefully step them up into something that's a bit more security conscious than perhaps they've been before.
That's what I was thinking, Aaron, when I invited you to speak. I didn't want the other organizations who are listening to this, whether they're a medium to large corporate or a small to medium sized organization, to be, I suppose, put off by the fact that this is a federal government framework. So if you could please speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So whilst the ACSC has that remit of providing guidance across the entire Australian economy, sometimes government guidance can be very peculiar and particular to government, but this guidance is designed specifically not to be. It's not trying to take everyone to a top level, top secret kind of federal government standard. It's absolutely designed to be applicable across the board. And so some of the things that it talks about, as we work through them, you'll see this things like application control, which we would have in the past talked about as application whitelisting. And that's been very hard for smaller organisations to implement in the past. Even a lot of large government organisations have really struggled with the higher maturity levels of that. But what they've tried to do with the Essential 8 is build in some basics. Just making sure that rogue processes find it a bit harder to get started inside your organisation by by starting to provide a little bit more lockdown around what's going to get run. And then if you look at other guidance in the Essential 8, you've got things like patching operating systems and applications. These are just really good practices that everybody needs to implement. Through to things like macro security, which we know can be a real challenge when so often macros become part of how you get things done. They're sort of built into your business process. But obviously there's some security considerations we need to take into account as we do that.
So we're talking about macros in Excel and Word. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, office document macros. Yep. That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
So really powerful, but equally, we need to be cautious about how we use them and the constraints we put around them to make sure they're not an attack vector that could, compromise your environment.
So if we were to talk, I don't want you to have to painfully go through all 8. We could be here for a long time. So if you were to pick maybe the top 3, Aaron, what would you consider? And if you can think, I suppose, across the entire spectrum of the audience who are listening, from government all the way through to SMBs, what would you consider the top 3?
So I wish I didn't have to talk about it. I wish it was something that everybody was already doing. But multi-factor authentication has got to be top of the heap for me. There's far too many times where people compromise on multi-factor authentication. They go to implement it and someone senior in the organization says, no, I don't like the way this works. I don't like the flow, or this is stopping me from sharing my password with my assistant. And so it gets backed out again. We've really got to really got to make sure we've got, multi-factor authentication, particularly as the implied factors of authentication are disappearing that we had in on-prem networks in the past. We kind of knew that if you were on the network and you were at a terminal, a password was enough. But now with cloud services and the ability to work remotely or from home, as we're all
now,
becomes critical. Can't just be that password that you've been kicking around for 10 years and reusing everywhere. We have to have more robust authentication mechanisms. And so for me, that's number 1 of the Essential 8, multi-factor auth.
Absolutely. And what would number 2 and 3 be?
Patching's huge, whether that's patching applications or patching the operating system. As Microsoft, we know that when you stay current, you stay more secure. It's one of the easiest things to do. I know it's been challenging in the past, and application compatibility is always a chief concern. But I guess what we're seeing is that the statistics bear out that if you bite the bullet and you stay current and you implement good patching hygiene, and so you're maybe rolling out progressively through your organization, you do get an opportunity to catch any application compatibility issues and deal with them as they arise. And that is actually, for that little bit of extra pain that you might get from that, you're avoiding what would otherwise be a really sizable amount of pain if you were to suffer a breach because of a lack of patch consistency. So,
and you're talking patching across not just servers but desktops as well.
Absolutely. Making sure those server operating systems and desktop operating systems and applications, importantly.
It's amazing how many organizations we walk into, the servers are patched, but the desktops aren't. And we're still finding a number of organizations, unfortunately, with Windows 7. So there is that too. Yeah, it's still out there.
It's look, I get it, right? If you're on Windows 7, your last upgrade probably hurt. It was probably difficult to get to Windows 7.
Yeah.
I'd like to say you're going to have a better experience getting to 10. There's a side part to that, which is once you get to Windows 10, you can't just sort of take your foot off the accelerator and, hey, job done, we don't have to worry about it anymore, because you've got to stay current on Windows 10, and that means keeping up with the patches there as well. So we have seen some customers who have fallen a little behind in their Windows 10 builds, and that's really important that they're addressing those too.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things, nobody likes to do it, but we really
it's a boring job, but that has to be done, though, patching.
Absolutely.
And what's the final?
Compromised because they've fallen behind, and that really hurts.
Absolutely. And what would your final pick be, Aaron?
Yeah, from there it becomes a little trickier, I guess. Macros is always a tough one. I've touched on it already, but I would say probably privileged user accounts. So, we rely on our admins to do the right thing all the time. Probably too often we rely on them not being compromised either as individuals or as user accounts, and maybe too much. I see a lot of organisations who still have too many domain admins if they've got if they're big enough to have an AD domain, or too many people that hold all the keys to the kingdom. And admins are people too, and they. I've been in that situation in my career. Sometimes you're either tempted to just quickly sneak in that change that is going to work and it's going to be great and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Or you do sometimes as humans not have best practices around passwords and some of those things. So securing admin accounts, ensuring they have really unconditional multi-factor authentication. So what I mean by that is wherever they are, whatever they're doing, if they want to use those admin credentials, they get multi-factor auth. Trying to keep those admin credentials separate from their day-to-day credentials. So you shouldn't be opening up personal email while you're logged in as an admin account. I know that can sound like really simple, but
it happens though, Aaron. I've seen it happen.
It happens. Yeah. So getting a lot of hygiene around admins and trying to move to models of just in time and just enough access. So if you don't need to be a domain admin 24/7, don't be a domain admin 24/7. Start from a lower set of privileges and just step it up as you need it and then bring it back, because it is dangerous to have the keys to every door in the organisation available to you 24 hours a day.
That's actually a fantastic way. I've never heard of it put that way, just in time. You brought quality into this one, so it's perfect. Cool. So what are you seeing? Thank you. So to summarize the three, it was multi-factor authentication, privileged accounts, well, actually it was patching, and then privileged accounts, and make sure that gets tightened. So just a broad question, I guess, before we wrap up. What are you seeing that's happening at the moment a lot? I know you're working in federal government, but generally across the Australian landscape, what are you seeing are probably the number 1 and 2 concerns, or even if you pick one concern in terms of security?
Yeah.
What's popping up?
We're still seeing way too much malware getting through. And if you apply those other mitigations that I've described, the patching and the control around user identity and particularly administrative identity, you can mitigate some of that. But we know that the game has moved on from, simple viruses that have been around for 10 years and you throw them over the fence and you see what happens. We now have far more sophisticated aggressors. And, as we've seen right now in this COVID-19 situation, there's people out there who want to take advantage of that. There's a sense of urgency that every attacker loves to take advantage of. And so being able to tag something as, hey, this is related to coronavirus, you have to act on it, is a great way for them to break in. And so having sophisticated intrusion detection and prevention measures, including, endpoint detection and response capabilities, is really critical. We can't just be looking for virus signatures that are already out there in the wild. We've got to be looking for the things we've never seen before, looking at the behaviours and analysing what's happening on our network. So I think that's a big one. We see far too much phishing, far too much polymorphic malware that's able to get onto the network. And as much as those other measures will help you, getting modern protections against those things is really important.
That's fantastic. So from a Microsoft perspective, I know we've spoken generally, but from a Microsoft perspective, does the Microsoft 365 product take care of a lot of those elements? Aaron, could you just very quickly talk us through that?
Oh, so that's a lot of the conversations I'm having with customers at the moment. How can they take advantage of those cloud technologies to just knock some of those things on the head? Now, when we talk about patching applications and operating systems, there's a lot of capability in Windows 10 there. You can stagger the deployment of updates. You can control application rollout through either sort of existing systems like SCCM, System Center Config Manager, all the way up to Microsoft Intune, which is our born in the cloud native device management platform. And that's a great way to keep an eye on what's happening on your fleet and also pushing out those updates for patches for applications and operating system updates. So there's a good amount of capability there. When we look at multi-factor authentication, every organisation that has Office 365 today has a form of multi-factor authentication available to them that they can start using. What they probably don't know is that they can take the identity that gets created for Office 365 and they can leverage that with other cloud services as well, and even back into the on-prem environment. So they can take that multi-factor authentication and roll it into other applications that they may be using today that possibly don't have multi-factor authentication and have single sign-on to them as well. So there's another great capability there in Microsoft 365 or for Office 365 customers. And then when it comes to the control of admin privileges, there are some capabilities in the suite that allow you to, fine-tune the role assignment and make sure that people are just getting what they need. That might be for admins in the traditional sense, like someone who manages email, or it could be just performing regular access reviews over members of groups that have maybe got edit rights on your intranet or something like that. So there's quite a bit of capability there, which I think on the surface, when people look at what is Microsoft 365, they maybe don't see all those things. But if they reach out to their partners and Microsoft team, there's a lot of capability there that we can help them to unlock and take advantage of. They probably already own.
I think that's always the tricky part. A lot of people who have Office 365 or Microsoft 365 don't realize how much gold there is in it. It's almost a mine that just keeps giving quite a lot in terms of it.
So it keeps me bigger.
Exactly.
And I know how hard it is to keep up as someone who's plumbed into that feed of information. It's hard. So that's what we're here to do. And as Microsoft partners, it's what you can help with as well, helping customers understand what's there and what they could be getting advantage of.
And what I might do too, at the bottom of this video, when we post it up on LinkedIn, I'll make sure that there are some resources that we make available for all of the IT and technical people who are watching this. And I know you're also a licensing expert, which is what you're well known all around the world for. I have to give you a plug on that one. Amazing. I will also post that at the bottom too, although I might just call you in for another licensing session when all of this COVID is over. Because there might be ways for customers to save money on licensing too, if they actually knew how to leverage the licensing in Microsoft.
Absolutely. I see so many customers who, they have a duplication of capability within their organization, and there's an opportunity to really consolidate there, and that leads to real cost savings. So
absolutely. So there you go. That's our next interview, Aaron.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are and how hard it is to get your time, so really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.